to get started. We're going to do something a little different, something we haven't done thus far, which is we're mostly studying the Gemara, and less so whatever the attachment is to the Parsha. But today they're like really linked, and so I want to just like for a minute read the first 15 or so verses of Parshat Shemot, beginning of Exodus, so that we're at least roughly on the same page. Does that sound good?
Good.
Yeah? Okay. So, I'm going to read it in English to save us a little time, but there was going to be some grammar stuff, and we'll get into it when it's time. So these are the names of the sons of Israel who came into Egypt with Jacob. Every man came with his household. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Issachar, Zevulun, and Benjamin. Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. Everybody got that? Yeah? Okay. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, and Joseph was in Egypt already. Okay? So that's like the introduction to the book, right? We ended, things, everybody was going to come to Egypt, then they did. Okay, here's when the trouble begins. Verse 6. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who knew not Joseph. Now I'm going to just read that one in Hebrew, because it's just like the nuance of it is it's actually quite powerful. Vayakom melech hadash, and there rose up a king that was new, al Mitzrayim, over Egypt, Asher, that lo yada et Yosef, that did not know Yosef. Okay. And the children, I read that one already. And he said unto his people, being Pharaoh, said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal wisely or shrewdly with them, lest they multiply and it become to pass, and that when they befall us any war, that they also join their enemies unto our enemies and fight against us and get them out of the land. Not that we haven't heard this before, but Jews somehow are going to be the enemies of our enemies, or the friends of our enemies. Somehow they're going to be a problem. Not new, clearly very old. Okay. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. Now, it's really important. This is verse 11. It does not say what I just read to you. What it uses the singular preposition. It says to him instead of to them. The translation is already solving a problem that the Gemara is going to point out, which is it says very clearly, therefore he did set over him taskmasters to inflict him with his burdens, which of course makes no sense at all. The Gemara is going to have a problem with it. And they built for Pharaoh store cities, Pitom and Ramses, but the more they afflicted them, it really says him, the more they multiplied and the more they spread abroad, and they were abroad because of the children of Israel. I'll read it. There's a couple more all right, we'll do 2 or 3 more verses, and then we'll move to the Gemara. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor. Befarech is what it is in Hebrew, with under burden or challenge. And they made their lives bitter with hard service, with mortar and brick, and in all manner of service in the field. In their service therein, they made them serve with rigor. Okay, everybody with me so far? That's the beginning of the book of Exodus. If it is useful, we can reference it later. But that's like the context. Now, there's a lot of like little details in there, right, that the Gemara is going to unpack for us. Sometimes when we learn Gemara, there's like a story, and we're taking other examples. We had that a couple of times. This is going to be very much more the pulling apart of verse, the real sort of midrashic work that we see in other midrash, but also the reminder that Gemara is not necessarily a law book. It's an interpretive book. It's training us how to read rabbinically. Okay, so open your packets. We're in session 5. At the bottom of your first page should say the number 64. Should say Sotah, Parak 1, 11a, and then it should say that in Hebrew. So keep flipping until you see it. The very first words on the top of the page are, with regard to Miriam's deed, if that's an easier way. Does everybody find it? Yeah? Okay, Yofi. Any questions before we start with the Gemara from those verses that we read? It's one of those things where you read it a million times, you've seen the Prince of Egypt, like you feel like you know it, and then as soon as you start reading really close, you're like, wait a second, I don't know any of this, I don't remember any of the details, and yet here we are.
The end of it is Haggadah. I mean, every year you.
Right, and we're still telling the story.
Reading it here.
Amazing. In fact, the Exodus story is so core. We literally mention it every day. We mention it 3 times a day. We mention it at Kiddush. We can't escape, pardon the pun, the Exodus of Egypt as such a core part of who we are. I'm in a group of, you'll forgive me for this detour, I'm sorry. I'm in a group of people who are doing 929. It's 5 chapters of Tanakh a week, and you read the whole thing. And we just finished Exodus. We started Vayikra this week, so it's like kind of amazing. I'm starting 2 books this week, right? And we were talking about how the 10 Commandments are such a core part of the visual language of synagogues, part of the giving of mitzvot, Mount Sinai, this whole thing. And yet, what do we talk about more than that? The Exodus from Egypt. Before any of that actually even happens, it's such a core part of it. So here we're going to look at the Gemara, who's going to unpack these verses for us a little bit. All right, somebody want to start where the little symbol is, where it says the Gemara proceeds. Everybody see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Somebody want to start and read it?
Sure.
Please, Iris.
The Gemara proceeds to discuss the sojourn of the Jewish people in Egypt. The verse states, "And there arose a new king over Egypt who knew not Joseph." Rav and Shmuel disagree about the interpretation of this verse.
All right, I'm going to pause you for there for a second. So throughout the early rabbinic history, there are pairs, right? Shammai and Hillel are one of them. Could I ask one of you to go grab whoever's there at the door? Thank you very much, Dan. And Rav and Shmuel are one of those pairs. They are Babylonian. They don't have the title of rabbi, but Rav clearly does. But they are of that ilk, and we know that they speak that they're Aramaic because of the fact that they are speaking Aramaic as opposed to Hebrew. The rabbis in Israel spoke Hebrew. They're earlier. The ones that later. All right. Enough explanation. Please continue.
Okay. One says that this means that he was actually a new king, and one says that this means that his decrees were transformed as if he were a new king. The one who says that he was actually a new king holds that it is because it is written new. And the one who says that his decrees were transformed holds that is because it is not written. And the previous king of Egypt died and a new king reigned. This indicates that the same king remained. According to this interpretation, the words "who knew not Joseph" mean that he was like someone who did not know him at all. Although he certainly knew Joseph and his accomplishments, he acted as if he did.
Rabbi Steinsaltz there trying to tie it up neatly in a bow
right,
here.
Right.
So again, just to remember that the bold is the translation and the not bold is Rabbi Steinsaltz's commentary. Yeah. So we have a couple of things here happening at once. We have this verse, which we read together, and there arose a new king over Egypt who knew not Joseph. You can see in the very beginning in the Aramaic or the Hebrew, whatever, Vayakom melech hadash, and then it says Vagomer. It just says the Vav Gimel Vav Chupchik. And that just means it's one of the 2 core ways that the tradition says, and so on, etc. Whatever, Vagomer. And it continues. And then we have this debate between Rav and Shmuel. We actually don't know who's who. It just says Chad Amar, and then it says Chad Amar. So one said the other. We don't really know who says. It doesn't really matter, right? There's this debate between them, which of course I love, because the debate was more important than who said it, right? We love to say B'Shem Amaro, whoever said it, we want to give them credit. Here, the credit was the debate rather than it was each individual one of them. Okay, so one of them says, it says a new king, Melech Chadash, therefore, it's a new king. It's a new guy. The old one, kicked the bucket, and there's a new one, what have you. Which is a great, simple reading of the verse. The problem with that is, who wouldn't know Joseph? He just saved Egypt over the course of the previous 14 years, who had died, right? And he had all of his ancestors there. I mean, it would be such a huge part of your history. We know every single American knows the legends, not necessarily the history, the legends of George Washington. It's 250 years ago. You'd think Joseph might have the stories of Joseph stuck around. So how do we resolve this? We have an alternative perspective here, which is, right, there was a new king, It wasn't really the new king, because if it was a new king, the Torah would have said the old one died. Didn't say it. Right? If there's no evidence, we don't know. We can't say for certain. So therefore, we have this sort of space to do it. But then you have this question, who knew not Joseph? How could you not know him? All right, so this is where Steinsaltz is like playing with the end there, right? Which is, he was like someone who did not know him at all. So here's the question I would say. Right, Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying, he knew Joseph, he acted like he didn't. So we can put that aside. That's one take. What would it mean for it to be the same Pharaoh and to not know Joseph? Like, what does that mean? Or what could that mean? Is it a choice? He's saying, I knew Joseph maybe wasn't so good. I'm downplaying. Or it was, the drought the famine was bad. Maybe it wasn't so bad. It wasn't such a big deal. Whatever. Yeah.
Well, I first of all, it's not clear what the time period is between the time that Joseph died and this alleged new king. It could be a really long time. I mean, these are the descendants, and they've already had time to multiply, and they already, the people.
There had to be
become
enough time
large,
for the Jewish people to grow that.
Right, to make any.
We have
to
famously
make the
succeeded
afraid
over the course of the last 80 years in growing tremendously, right? Not so much.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's kind of a weak argument, because when you want to say the Torah doesn't say something,
It's hard to prove a negative, right?
Read it in, but it's not.
Right.
a
It didn't
good
say
argument.
Joseph wasn't Pharaoh's uncle, right? It's like, no, I can't say that,
Yeah.
right? Cool. So, is there one of the takes you like more than other? And I'll come to you, Dan. New king or old king?
Well, until I read this, I actually assumed it was a new king with a pretty long time after Joseph died.
I think it's a reasonable read from the text itself. Yeah, Dan.
I mean, the other thing is there's also the gap of time between the 7 years of famine and Joseph's death. So, like...
The 7 years of plenty.
Yeah, 7 years of...
No.
The famines are second.
Oh, you're right, you're right.
So, there's not much said about, like, what happened in the... Like, he was in charge of everything for those 14 years. And then, like...
He retired.
Yeah, I mean, like, we don't know. Like, did he continue to be the second in command, and the Pharaoh would remember that? Or did he was like, okay, you've done your job, and, what happened since?
You're on
Go to
furlough.
Goshen and be
So
So
with
it's
your
so it's sort of
family.
like, what have you done for me this
Decade, right? That was your instinct. I think it was right, right?
I
Yeah.
think people forget very easily.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good argument to say, like, what do you mean how you could forget Joseph? We are forgetting history all the time.
Fair enough. That's why we only know the legends of George Washington and not
Sure.
the history.
There's forgetting and there's rewriting.
But I think that
Wait a second, Michael. Wait a second. Howard, go please.
No, I mean, I really had a thought. I mean, the history is replete of people who rewrote history. They may have actually remembered it, they didn't like what they remembered, wasn't useful to them, so they rewrote it, either in their own heads or for their political benefit.
Right. We might want to then reread who knew not Joseph to be something along the lines and didn't want others to know Joseph. Right?
Or maybe in some weird psychological way, he didn't know. I mean,
He's the recipient
Right.
of the
Right.
of the misinformation.
Right, exactly,
Yeah, Michael.
the most straightforward interpretation of the language is that it was an actual new king
Right.
who did not have a personal relationship with Joseph, and for that reason, did whatever his knowledge of what went before, even if he knew of the legend and so forth, did not have a feeling of incumbent gratitude.
Yeah.
For what he
Not
had
enough
done.
substance, maybe.
So the the validity of the less literal interpretation would have to be that it comes to teach us something, because why else stretch it so far to have such an awkward,
Yeah.
unnatural interpretation of the text?
I think one of the things that's making me think is how profoundly Judaism cares about memory and remembering. and what it means to have the enemy of the Israelites so fundamentally not remember. And how those things are, right? So later on, you can read the plagues as like responses to, there's a take that they're responses to Egyptian gods, that each one corresponds to an Egyptian god. So here also, right, the leader of the Egyptians doesn't remember, the Jews remember, right? That there's a contrast there. Yeah, there's lots of cool ways to dig into it.
But doesn't Yada have not the sense of was unaware of, but didn't have a relationship with?
Yeah, Yada can mean a lot of things.
It's used for sexuality.
Right, it does have a sexual, it can have a sexual encounter there. It might also just mean a sense of intimacy, depth, right?
Yeah.
I think the Torah is not consistent in having it be one or the other. And off the top of my head, I can't think of how well lahakir, to sort of recognize, is used in the Torah. Off the top of my head, in modern Hebrew, you wouldn't say that you know someone, because it usually does mean something more profound than you met them on the randomly at a Shabbos table. But in the Torah, it's not specific, because it means a lot of different things.
Sure, but I think it would still have connotations beyond simple awareness.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that also would be consistent with Chadash, meaning it was a new king. He did not have a prior relationship with Joseph personally.
I can see, Michael, you really wanted to have an answer. I can see this. I can see this.
I'm willing to buy into the other if it comes to teach me something useful.
Yeah. Well, so I think the beautiful thing, right? So, and then we'll move on after this, which is, if you want an answer, this is going to be a really unsatisfying class today, in particular, because part of what midrash is reminding us is that these things some piece of these are all true on some level. That's like the paradox, which is if you read all the midrashim and you accept all of them are as true, it can't possibly work. But also, there's a great Torah there to be found, and therefore we want to keep all of them on some level. And so there's a tension of saying, okay, there is a Torah here for me to learn and the opportunity, and maybe there's the right time and place. So it might be not that Rav and Shmuel are right or wrong, but there's a right moment to hold by one of them or the other, depending on the context. Yeah, Dan.
I mean, the learning from also thinking of the timing of the writing. So, like in the Roman times, like there's one ruler after the other, and some of them might make a promise, and some of them will renege on the promise. So I could see the more loose interpretation being very much the don't put too much hope in any of these Roman rulers. That what they say today might not be what happens tomorrow. They may disappear tomorrow.
Right. Rav and Shmuel were probably in Babylonia, but I think the point remains, which is you are under someone else's thumb.
Yeah.
And you can't guarantee they're going to remember all the good stuff you did for the previous guy. Yeah, I think that's a great point. All right, let's keep going. And it's going to move from verse to verse. So it's not even going to come back. We're not going to come back to this argument. We're going to sort of explore different ones. So we'll go through them faster, but I wanted to give you a taste of how deep even one of these debates can really take us. I think you had volunteered to read before. Please continue the next verse.
The next verse states, "And he said to his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. It was taught, he, Pharaoh, initiated the proposal. Therefore, of his people he was stricken first. He initiated the proposal, as it is written, and he said to his people, Therefore he was stricken first, as it is written, and the frog shall come up both upon you and upon your people and upon all your servants."
Amazing, right? So here, what are the rabbis doing? They're reading really, really closely, right? So how do we know, right? Because Pharaoh is the one who said to his people, "Vayomer el amo," he said it to his people. Someone else didn't say it, right? It wasn't. It was said. No, he did the saying, and therefore, he's the one who got punished first. Right, the frogs will come upon you, and then your people, and upon, it doesn't say then, I'm adding that, and upon your servants. Right, this you only notice this if you're reading really, really closely. Because at a quick read, you're not going to notice such a thing. I wouldn't have noticed such a thing. Maybe you guys are better readers than me. Certainly possible. But here, that's the move, right? Really close reading. Who's doing what? Pharaoh initiated the proposal, therefore Pharaoh has a consequence. Okay, keep reading me the next one for us.
The next verse states that Pharaoh said, "Come, let us deal wisely with him. Lo,
Yeah.
lest he multiply, and it come to pass that when there befalls us any war, he will also join our enemies and fight against us."
Right, this is the part where I said the translation was wrong, right? Where the translation had already smoothed out the problem. We're getting into it now. Keep going.
The Gemara comments, he should have said in the plural, with them, lachem, rather than the singular, with him. Rabbi Chama, son of Rabbi Hanina, says that Pharaoh was saying, "Come, let us deal wisely with regard to the Savior of Israel," referring to God.
Great. Okay. So because the verse uses the third person singular, him, lo, which could refer to something that is in the aggregate, right? Which I think is feminine, is a people. It's singular, but it's also a group. So like, okay, there's some space for that potentially. It's confusing for it to be written this way. Because in the context, it doesn't make any sense. Who would be the him, right? This is the tension between the Torah being written a particular way, living in a translation, and also understanding what the story is trying to tell us. And so here, the Gemara does something really interesting. If you look in the Aramaic, it's that first sentence. It says, Hava nit chak malo, that's from the verse, and it says, Lahem miba'ele. Miba'ele, ba'e means to need, or so it's like the verse needed to have said. Mm-hmm. So that root comes up a lot. That's like a classic Gemara word, miba'ele. Le is the him, and it was referring to the Gemara, or referring to the Torah there. So it's like, okay, it should have said lehem. It didn't say lehem, it should have said lehem, it should to them. Right? They are the bad guys. In this case, it's we are the bad guys, the Israelites, but they are the bad guys. But unfortunately, for Rabbi Chama bar Rabbi Hanina, he doesn't want to solve it that way. Right? Like, it's still a problem. It should have been in one pronoun, and it was a different pronoun, or a preposition, or whatever. And so Rabbi Chama, the son of Rabbi Hanina, comes to save the Torah. Right? We have to resolve this tension some way. The grammar is wrong to what we've decided is right. And so therefore, what is the he, grammatically speaking? It's God. Right? It's a nice little solve. It doesn't really solve the problem because it doesn't really make any sense for it to be God, but okay, fine. Right? That's how Rabbi Chama Rabbi Hanina is saving the piece. The Torah there. Okay. We're going to skip a couple paragraphs here.
Sorry,
But
do we do more with this, or are we going to go on?
it's going to jump into a couple of different things. All right. So today is not
they're
like one
trying
story.
They're not trying to draw a larger comparison to the larger deity war. This idea that, I mean, right, that we have this concept that our version of God was waging war, right? Like one of the ways that I've understood the Pesach story is that monotheism did not used to be our God in exclusion of all other gods, but our God above all other gods. And so therefore our God is trying to prove God's might against all these Egyptian gods. Are the rabbis not trying to do that here?
Yes, the Torah basically means that in its own vernacular, right? That there's like different gods, and ours
it does not assume that those gods don't exist.
Correct.
In our version of monotheism,
Correct.
we say they don't
right,
exist.
which is much more modern. Exactly.
But
In this section of the Gemara, they are not unpacking that specific thing. In fact, we haven't even gotten to the plagues yet. Right?
Sure, right. But I didn't know if they're setting that up.
They might later.
Right? Our God versus your God.
Right. I can't remember if it's a Gemara, it's a Talmudic interpretation, or much later. I just don't remember. But in this case, they're not going. In the stuff we're reading today, they're not going to go that way. But I do think what's valuable in seeing all these sort of little bits and pieces is it's the aggregate of thinking about how rabbis think. How did we get to this thing? And also it gives us a little bit of chomer, material, to think about Torah perhaps in a different way, right? We're going to skip a couple of paragraphs. I'm going to give you a summary. So here it does like this thing happens with fire, that thing's going to happen with fire. This thing's going to happen with water, that thing is going to happen with water. Again, going verse by verse of these kinds of things. In this case, it's like, what is Pharaoh going to be punished with? Is based on that. So turn the page.
Yeah, but the inappropriate singulars are in the voice of Pharaoh, Which doesn't mean the rabbis are buying into a multiplicity of divinity, simply that maybe Pharaoh was.
Yeah, I think two things on that, and then we focus. I don't want to go too deep in the rabbit hole. The Torah, in its own understanding of itself, does not think that there's only one God.
Yeah.
It thinks of our God as in charge, and our as part of our relationship. We have a specific relationship with this God, and that other gods may or may not exist, but they're not ours. They're none of our business, right? So it never says Baal doesn't exist. It's like, don't go hang out with Baal. Let Baal people do Baal things, right?
And Yehevavhe is more powerful than Baal.
Correct. And fundamentally, we have a relationship with Hashem, and therefore, don't do it. Like, it doesn't matter if those other gods exist. The second thing is the Zoroastrian tradition, of which the Babylonian rabbis are spending time in, is a religious tradition that believes in duality. It's like good versus evil. And that there are sort of like two, I don't know a lot about Zoroastrianism, so like don't quote me too much, but it's like the two deities sort of framework where there's like two forces or something like that. And so even they are living in a world in which multiple gods is a context. It's not until much, much, much more recently that we get into this, there's only one God. That's not something that the Torah is saying about itself. It's something we've added much later. And, you know, that's a worthy conversation about whether or not we believe that now. Okay. So, again, we go into these different interpretations about different kind of punishments. But now I want you to go to the second paragraph on page 65. We've turned the page. It's got the bricks. Okay. Can I get a volunteer who says Rabbi Chia bar Abba? It's one of the most crazy stories I've ever heard in the Talmud. Somebody want to read for me? Go for it.
Rabbi Chia bar Abba says that Rabbi Simai says, 3 noteworthy people were consulted by Pharaoh in that council, where Pharaoh questioned what should be done with the Jewish people. They were Balaam and Job and Yitro.
What is happening? Right? Okay.
Whoa.
So we've got this thing. Pharaoh is trying to figure out what to do with these stiff-necked people. They're not stiff-necked yet. They're going to be stiff-necked, right? And what do you do when you have a tough decision to make? You find some people to talk to. Who does he talk to? Balaam, Job, and Yitro, right? Moshe's father-in-law, right? Yitro, Job, prophet of God, and Balaam, also a prophet. He's the one that ends up saying Matovu, right, in the desert, right?
Just so we're clear, his father-in-law, who's not his father-in-law currently, because Moses.
This hasn't happened yet.
Right.
100%.
Just checking.
Yeah.
These people did not live at the same time period.
So that's an interesting question, right? If we are fuzzy with the numbers a little bit, it's like not beyond the pale that some of these people might have overlapped, but it's pretty radical that the three. What I'm saying is it's very radical that you'd even put them all in the same room together, right? Even if we were to be as charitable, right? If we were as charitable as humanly possible, it's still pretty impossible.
Not enough people are living to 900.
I'm sorry, right? Tower is a funny place. All right, let's keep going. Let's see what happens.
Rabbi bar Abba teaches what occurred to each of them. Balaam, who advised Pharaoh to kill all the sons born to the Jewish people, was punished by being killed in the war with Midian. Job, who was silent and neither advised nor protested, was punished by suffering, as detailed in the eponymous book in the Bible. Yitro, who ran away as a sign of protest, merited that some of his children's children sat in the Sanhedrin, in the chamber of hewn stone, as it is stated, and the families of scribes who dwelt at Jabez, Tirathites, Shemaites.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister. Keep going. There are a bunch of these ites.
Suchaites. These were the Canaanites who descended from Hamath, the father of the house of Rechab.
So wait, before you, keep reading. I'm sorry.
And it is written, the children of Canaanite, Moses' father-in-law. This teaches that the Canaanites, descendants of Yitro, the father-in-law of Moses, dwelt at Jabez, referring to the place where the Jewish people go for advice, the chamber of hewn stone.
Okay. Let's take a deep breath here.
It's like science fiction.
It's a little. So we're going to do this backwards. We're going to start with Yitro and go back up. Okay. We have this thing happening with Yitro where he runs away. We're going to put that aside for just a second. we have in Chronicles and in Judges and in various other places, this is a reminder of how closely read and intimately knowledgeable the rabbis were with all of Tanakh. To pull these kinds of details together, to remember who's connected to who's what, it just a real sense of reflection of like how deeply they understood this material. That's what happens when you don't have Netflix, right? Like you just have like tons of access, right? Okay. And here they're tracing, they're trying to make a connection so that Yitro is going to get a reward. And that's what we're doing. We're not going to unpack how they got there. It's sort of like, okay, the associative thinking, fine. Right, this person is that person. Saying Sanhedrin, this person is related to that person. Okay, fine. It's some sort of reward. We know what the Gemara is trying to do, which is that Yitro, when Pharaoh comes to Yitro and say, what should I do? Yitro responds by not engaging. By saying, I'm not a part of this. And we could have an argument, I think maybe we should, whether or not that was a good choice or not. We'll read everybody else first and then we can talk about it. But somehow the Gemara seems to suggest that response was an appropriate one. Now this is all made up. The rabbis are doing midrash here. They are not hanging very much in this take. Rabbi Chia bar Abba is not explaining, like there's no source to prove each of these, okay? So it's just a midrash. So Yitro does a good thing by not participating, by actively disengaging. You have Job, who in response to Pharaoh's question, should Pharaoh destroy the Jewish people, is silent. Doesn't say yes, doesn't say no, doesn't engage in a different way. And as we sort of made reference, he had quite a bit of suffering of his own, right? Just to remember that Job is tested by God and Satan to see if he would still stay faithful. No, yeah.
Isn't it very clear in the text of Job that Job did nothing wrong?
Correct.
Okay, just checking. Like
Yes.
we don't need to come up with a reason
We don't.
that Job needs to suffer
Right.
because it's
Well, we're not-
abundantly clear in the text.
But wait a second.
It's inconsistent with Job.
Right. So Job basically makes the argument where he says, why is this happening to me? And they basically say, shut up. It's not a satisfying answer. This gives us an answer, which we don't otherwise have.
Right, but I
So
thought Satan and God,
They're testing him because
they're one-upping each other.
correct. This gives us a reason. That Job Job did something. We don't have that story in Job. The actual book doesn't say that.
But then we're kind of ignoring the text of Job.
This
Okay.
is radical text. I'm not arguing.
Okay, no, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, we're just
If I'm
ignoring
remembering
parts.
Job, like Job is faithful. He's not
Correct.
blameless. He's like the ultimate in having
Sure.
faith in God. He's not.
But don't they say something like, what has Job done to deserve this? And they're like, nothing.
They basically say shut up. Like it's beyond Job's understanding is the response. God,
Which would be arguing it's beyond human understanding.
correct.
Right.
So the rabbis are solving that problem.
Right, they're saying no.
There was a reason. There was a reason. Pharaoh came to him and he didn't do the right thing.
But at
Because
the,
he wasn't
Right?
born yet.
Right, because he wasn't born
at
yet.
the
Right.
very beginning,
Very easy to be silent when you haven't been born yet. Michael, before you go, and then we're done this backwards, and Balaam, who opted in to cursing the Jewish people, even though it didn't go his way, right? And ultimately, attempted, didn't go his way, but he was willing to go for it, and ostensibly is the reason, right, Pharaoh decided to kill sons. Right, which we didn't read when we did the introduction, but and so Balaam is the mastermind, the bad guy here, and he gets appropriately and adequately punished for it. Maybe not in the moment, but maybe later, right? All right, Michael, and then Iris.
Maybe I'm just misremembering. I thought at the very intro of Job, there was some indication that he was innocent. And that it's the friends who would say, well, maybe you did something wrong, and then maybe you didn't. But I thought at the very beginning of the conversation between God and Satan, there was acknowledgement that he was innocent. Am I misremembering?
The truth is that I can't remember Job well enough we could go look it up. But
I
I think,
don't know if the word was innocent.
yeah,
so much
I'm not sure the
as
word not guilty. Right. I think what this comes to do is to give an answer for something that's unanswerable.
Got it.
Which is to say, we don't have an answer. We're getting one here as brief as like a flash in the pan kind of answer here, which is not really much of an answer at all, right? Iris.
Yeah, and it's interesting, they're identifying Yitro as a Kenite. I mean, the Kenites were not such good people. I mean, they eventually fought against Israel, and it was the head of the Kenites that Yael put the tent pin in his head or something. And so, I mean, it's interesting that they want to identify Yitro, who they're trying to say is blameless here, as a Kenite. And I don't remember ever reading that Yitro was a Kenite in the Torah.
They love making Yitro so many things.
They do. They give him
He's-
lots of names
he's
to other
so
things.
many
Yeah.
roles.
But I regardless of the specific details, it seems clear to me that they're trying to say something good, even if it's circuitous, or Rabbi Chia bar Abba is.
But I just checked. The first verse of Job is he's blameless and upright. So
I
but
just
yeah.
use the same
But the Yitro one is the one that actually bothers me also, because like you want to say something good about Yitro. It's like he was an advisor. He became an advisor to Moshe, and his grandkids were Moshe's kids, and his wife. Like there's so much good you could say was his reward,
Yeah.
and instead they're going. It's like sort of like, I mean, the Torah really doesn't cover Gershom and like Moshe's kids really at all.
Almost at all, yeah.
So maybe there's sort of this, oral history that those kids aren't really that great people, but it seems like they just jump. Like we don't want to talk about the kids. We don't want to talk about that close. We want to talk about something way in the future, which I can't figure out what the lesson they're trying to pull from that is.
Yeah, I mean, my first instinct would be to say like, to be anti-savior in language, right? Like if Moshe's descendants were focused on, right, they might still be in power, kind of thing, right? But they're not, right? The power didn't function that way. The Torah doesn't focus on that, certainly, but the rabbis, who are certainly living in a universe with Christianity, may be interested in pushing us in that way, which is not quite where you were going, but it's a piece of it.
So
Yeah.
I have a question. Job is not a Megillah. Is it
Ketuvim.
prophets? It's
It's
Ketuvim, or
a
it's
Ketuvim, yeah.
so it's considered like Ruach Hashem,
Okay, go on.
but Tanakh is considered like from God more directly, because what I'm struggling here is that like all it is from their perspective considered connected to God directly or indirectly versus directly, and we've got Job, which is abundantly clear about something, and the Torah, which isn't, but then they're shifting around the Torah in this like him situation, because they don't, I mean, I assume part of it is they don't want to say the Torah is wrong. They don't want to say
They
there
do
was a misspelling. They don't want to say there was something lost in translation. They don't want to say something that happened over hundreds of years. Like, they don't
Yeah.
want to say that.
Yeah.
Right? So there has to be meaning in it. But something that is still attributed to Ruach Hashem is somehow fully flipped.
Yeah, so
which
I
is
think,
confusing to me.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. One is that Tanakh is full. If we take Torah, right, we got Nach. We have the writings of prophets, which is distinct from Torah,
Yeah.
in the sense that
As-
Torah is really understood by the rabbis to be given in its entirety to Moshe at Sinai. Whether or not you personally believe that is certainly up to you. And such to the point where Moshe is writing down his own death
right.
and crying over it at the end of Deuteronomy,
Sure.
right? But that's not true with the rest of Nach, where you have
correct.
prophets like Jeremiah who are living through a thing and that's being documented. And so I think that's true with Ketuvim as well. But it's not that it's more or less part of God, right? All of it has some sort of relationship with the divine. But even if you look at the rest of it, where you have Psalms and Proverbs and Kohelet, right, given Ecclesiastes, right, which are all given to, attributed to Solomon, or I guess Song of Songs is attributed, not Psalms. Psalms
Okay,
is to
I
David,
thought
but
Kohelet was considered.
it is.
Yeah.
Psalms was the wrong one there.
Oh, okay.
A Song of Songs, that those are written by people who have a relationship with God, and that Job, again, we're not really getting a narrator here. We don't in Jonah either,
Right.
right? In lots of places, we're not necessarily getting them, but they're included in the canon. Esther, right? God's the
Now it's the
beginning-
Megillot,
right?
right, yes.
So all of that is to say that it was a part of the canon, and in other places, the Gemara they discuss when things should or shouldn't have been
Yeah.
included.
Because they're still creating the canon.
They
Part
are.
of me that happened.
I think it's mostly happened by now,
Okay.
but they discuss it as if there was some decision making still happening. I think what this is really valuable in showing us about how Talmud works is that almost everything's up for grabs. That it's okay to flip the book a little on its head. Look, the fact that Pharaoh is talking to these three people is already in bonkers land. Like, we are just so beyond what's rational. The question then becomes, why are we talking about it
Right.
here?
Yeah. Sure.
They're looking for somebody that didn't get killed for what they're saying was the wrong thing to do.
Well, no,
But
Balaam
suffered-
does get
No,
killed.
no,
Yeah.
but no, they have somebody who died. They're looking for somebody else who didn't die.
Oh, with the
but-
Job
but-
example.
But suffered acutely,
Right.
notwithstanding the thing that
That's cer- that's
no,
cer-
I mean, I found the same thing, that it repeats several times. Tom and fears, and I think Yashar and fears God. Did I get it all down? I mean,
I'm sure it's close enough. I want to step one level higher.
Sure,
Right.
yeah.
Dan, and then
I mean, sort of building off what you were saying, like, it's, you know, this whole, like, he, them grammar thing. Like, it really bothered them, so they're going to go out on a limb to, like, say, this can't be right, we have to come out with something here. I wonder if the book of Job, it's kind of the same thing. Like, it just bothered them absolutely so much that even the pshat, like the straight words, like, someone is punished this way just because of an argument between God and Satan, is just so problematic that they had to sort of say, no, the straight reading was wrong. We had to come up with some reason this guy deserves something, because the straight reading is just so theologically
right. Certainly
Correct.
Chia Bar Abba does.
Yeah.
Right. As our
Yeah.
right. And I would add, yeah, Iris.
I don't think it matters that much. They could have put other people in here too. I mean, this is the Talmudic imagination, you know, and so they're pretending that for whatever reason that Pharaoh got the advice to kill all the male children. And then the rest of it is kind of just window dressing in some
proof.
sense.
Right.
Yeah, and so they could have picked, I don't know who, but somebody else, you know, another character. This is not, I don't think we should worry that much about what it actually says in Job, or what, you know, or, I mean, I started too with about the Kenites, but the, you know, it really is just, everything they say in the Talmud, sometimes it's just weird, and sometimes it's just off. and people, it seemed like the rabbis were often willing to just say things because they thought about it, and then it got written down, and then it gets rescinded sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't.
So I want to say two pieces, if I can. One is I want to pull on the thing you said, which is it invites us also to read closely in these books, even if they're not doing it closely here or they're playing with it, to understand the depth of the thing that they're saying, to say, why Balaam, right? We have to know those stories. This is an invitation to, like, be intimate with those stories. And then the second thing, right, to step back, which is maybe this is a conversation about what does it mean to get advice? If you're being asked for advice, how should you show up? Yeah, Howard.
So I look at this issue, I look at this with a completely different lens. So I don't think the story is about Pharaoh at all. You know, so if it were, I mean, so Pharaoh does this crazy time travel thing and talks to these three guys to get advice. And actually, only one of them gives him advice. The other two don't even have advice for him.
Yeah.
This seems more like the rabbis are struggling to come up with explanations for the fates of Balaam, Job, and Egypt.
Yeah.
And like Dan was saying, I don't understand why they had to work so hard with Yitro. I mean, he was a pretty good guy.
Right? They didn't even do it with the other guys.
Yeah. So that's what's so weird. But I don't really see this as having much to do with Pharaoh, as opposed to all the rest of what we read before, which was really all about Pharaoh.
Yeah, that's great. Right, 2 of them didn't give advice even at all. Right, I think that's yes. Yeah, I mean yes to all of it. Right, which is that we're pulling Rabbi Chia bar Abba here, or really Rabbi Simai, is we have this sort of unconscionable thing, which is a rule that every male Jewish child, Israelite child, should be killed. Well, like, how could such a thing be possible, right? And what happens to people who are involved in such a thing, right? Here we start to get a piece of it, right? A little bit at all. Let's keep going a little bit more, and then there's one more story I want us to sort of like focus in on. Someone want to read versus the verse states the next one. Okay. The verse states, Come, let us deal wisely with him, lest he multiply, and it come to pass when there befalls us any war, he will also join our enemies and fight against us and get him out of the land. You notice here, bold, not bold. The first time we saw it, we got the first part quoted, and now we have the second part quoted. So now we're going to unpack the same verse in a different way. However, you should know, when the Gemara quotes a verse, sometimes they don't even quote the part they're interested in. So just know. It's sort of helpful sometimes, but not others. The Gemara comments, he should have said, and get us up, right? Befalls us anywhere, get us up. As the Pharaoh's fear was that the Jewish people would join the enemies of Egypt and drive Pharaoh and Egyptians out of Egypt. Rabbi Abba Bar Kana says, by stating this, the Pharaoh is like a person who curses himself but applies his curse to another. I think this is so powerful. There's such one of the things we can do with Gemara, because it's so associative, is it creates these little building blocks that we can build midrash on. Later on, with other Hasidic commentators and other folks, they're going to pull a line out of context in the Gemara, from the Gemara, just like the Gemara is doing from Tanakh, and it becomes these like spiritual building blocks that we can start to put on top of each other. I'm so drawn to this idea. This so it's so compelling. This idea of someone who curses themselves and applies their curse to others. Like, nobody should throw stones, right? It's like as the metaphor goes, right? It's like it's probably true about you too, right? Or we only see the things that are wrong in other people that are wrong about us, right? It drives me crazy. In my life right now, it drives me crazy when we're late somewhere. But like all through my childhood, I was like the latest. Like I get into such fights with my family because I was dragging my heels on it. So it's like we see, and I find this whole moment, Rabbi Bar Kahana, is like such a powerful little nugget. Like we're gonna blip right past it, but I just want to like draw it out as this tiny little throwaway but deeply profound line. We could probably spend an entire book
What's
on.
the curse?
What's the one? Yeah.
No, the curse is that
the idea
Jewish people
is
become so great that
it says get him up out of the land, and the him seems to be someone else, but he's referring to the Egyptians, and what it should say is get us up out of the land. That the fear that Pharaoh's having is that the Israelites and the enemies are going to remove the Egyptians from the land.
But this
But the text of the language itself is saying him instead of us.
okay.
It's just a grammar.
No, I understand that. I don't understand.
What the curse is being expelled from the land.
But so
By
by being
Egypt's
concerned
enemies.
that the Israelites were going to expel the Egyptians, the Israelites themselves got expelled?
No. Okay. Pharaoh is afraid. And so he says to his people, we got to deal with these Israelites.
Sure.
Because when our enemies come to attack us, they're going to join
Israelites
the
will side with
enemies.
the enemy. Right.
Yes. And then the language so specific says, get him up out of the land.
Yes.
So who's the him? Who's getting up out of the land? He's referring to the Egyptians themselves. It's a weird phrasing.
Okay.
So the curse is that the Egyptians are going to get removed by the enemies by help of the Israelites.
But
Okay.
I think that I'm sorry.
No, it's
No,
okay.
go-
And then he should have said it about himself.
I feel like I need a diagram. I'm not understanding.
it's okay.
Go move on. It's fine. Leave me. It's fine.
In other contexts, I have a whiteboard, and I'm a diagram person
You can
too.
abandon me. It's
Yeah.
fine. Don't worry about it.
Michael, give it a shot, and then we'll move
Okay,
on.
another possibility is that the problematic use of a singular as opposed to a plural was with respect to the Jews earlier.
Yes.
And
Now
what-
it's about the
and
Egyptians.
well, maybe. You could also say that this was an expression of tremendous ambivalence about the relationship with the Jews, that they are a danger, they are here, they may join our enemies, but they're really useful to us. We don't want to lose that labor. And so get him out of the land would be, they would flee Egypt as they eventually did.
I don't think that's what Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana is, but I love the drash.
No, but I think that
That's what
I-
Pharaoh's saying in the moment.
I'm going back to what I think the shot was. Then let's talk about midrash.
Got it.
And I think the shot was that in the same way that you have a problematic singular earlier in Pharaoh's mouth, you have a similar problematic singular with the same reference.
I'm with you now. There's a perfect transition. Why don't you read the next paragraph? The next verse
The next
states.
verse says, "Therefore they did not set over him taskmasters in order to afflict him with burdens," which is, I mean, that.
Again, the grammar is funny there.
They're citing Exodus.
They did, not.
Therefore, they did say, I'm sorry, I've even got a tolerable prescription here. Therefore, they did set over him taskmasters in order to afflict him with their burdens.
Right, and again, just to draw out that the grammar is individualized rather than
Right,
in broad.
right.
Keep going. It says alav instead of alehem. Go on.
Gemara comments, it should have stated over them in the plural. The school of Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, taught, this teaches that at first they brought a brick mold and they hung it on the neck of Pharaoh to create the appearance that he was also participating in the labor. And with regard to each and every Jew who said to the Egyptians, I am a delicate person and I cannot participate in the labor, they said to him, are you all more of a delicate person than Pharaoh? And he is participating. Therefore, the verse states, they did set over him as they first placed the burden on Pharaoh as an artifice to enslave the Jewish people.
Okay.
Good try.
Okay. So again, the rabbis are seeing a challenging grammatical thing. And so who's the him? Why could this possibly be him? And they're coming up with an answer. The answer, no. An answer, yes. Right? And so the answer here is, why did they set over him taskmasters? Who's the him? In this case, it's Pharaoh, right? And I love the fact that, like, in the Gemara, it's like the Jew is saying, I'm an East. I'm delicate. I can't do labor, right? No, and then comparing it to Pharaoh. It's so funny. It reminds me of something one of my teachers said, which is, what this does is gives us, there's a delicate balance here between reading really closely and making assumptions. We have to be there's a delicate balance between, we want to read closely, we want to give midrash, there's something valuable we can read between the lines, but also if we make a wrong assumption earlier on, it can lead us down the wrong path. And I'm going to give you the example I learned from my teacher. My teacher's name is Janet Davis. She's one of the greatest Gemara teachers I've ever had in my life. Amazing human being. She came up in conversation a lot this week, so she's like in my mind, in my life. And when she would teach us, she had a painting. On the painting, it had a group of people carrying an object and sort of like parading. And when she bought it at some vintage store, and she asked the owner, well, what do you think it is? Like, what's this thing about? And so, it's Mardi Gras. They're marching, it's a holiday, and they're carrying the big thing of jambalaya as they're going through, the Mardi Gras and the march. The painting is very clearly Simchat Torah. Right? This person doesn't know what Simchat Torah. Made an assumption earlier on that led them down a path. But it happens to be an inaccurate path. But we find ways to make the details work. Right? The thing was very clearly a Torah. It wasn't a thing of jambalaya. But it was a reasonable guess if you don't know anything about Simchat Torah. And she would use this to teach us about being careful about the interpretation, our translations, about making a mistake early and letting it pull us way out the wrong direction. But I'm thinking about it now, which is to say that the rabbis are sort of, she used to say, like, going to Mardi Gras as like have you gone to Mardi Gras? Like as a way of reminding us this. In some ways, the rabbis are doing this a little on purpose. They're making an assumption early on to let themselves go on a path that maybe is not inaccurate necessarily, but allows them the space to do the interpretive work. And I think it's important for us as we are students of Torah to try and live in that tension where we want to be so accurate, where we're looking at every vav, but also giving ourselves space to be like, that vav could be anything. It's not really anything, but you know what I mean, that we live in that tension. And here we have this example where we have alav, it's on, they place this taskmaster on him, and the him ends up being Pharaoh, which is a ludicrous thing to say when you read the text of the Torah. There's no way the Pharaoh is going to have a taskmaster but here it gives us a space to do something interesting. Okay, let's turn over. It does a little bit more with the burdens and afflicting and stuff like that. And then here we get our last text. The verse concludes. We're at the second paragraph on page 66. Everybody got it?
Yeah.
Okay. The verse concludes. And they built for Pharaoh storage cities, Miskenot, Pitom, and Ramses. Rav and Shmuel, which we get again, disagree as to the precise interpretation of the word Miskenot. Chadamar, one says that they are called this because they are a type of structures that endanger, misakenot, their owners. And it is dangerous to work in cities with tall buildings, right? So you have one thing, Ramses and Miskenot are the storage cities, and you have this sakana, danger, right? So they're playing with the vowels and the words there, right? So one turns into one and then turns the other. The other one says, Chadamar, that they are called this because of the type of property that impoverishes. I'm going to look in the Aramaic as opposed to the English.
It's the second.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm reading it. Shememas kenot et ba'alehen, right? Impoverishes their owners. And the master said, all who engage in construction become poor. The rabbis had feelings. Different rabbis had very strong feelings about different kinds of labors. We have not learned too much of that in this, but certainly they have feelings about people who farm or this, that, and the other thing. People who study all day, all sorts of stuff. But here, right, we've got wordplay, pun. We've got these words that have, miskenot, right? Has nothing to do with the word sakana, danger, but yet it gives us the space to play with it here. The verse states that the names of the cities were built Pitom and Ramses. Rav and Shmuel disagree as to the precise interpretation of this verse, both assuming that only one city was built and the primary had set for primary and secondary names. Again, we talked about Yitro briefly, but Yitro has all sorts of names that started getting attributed to him by the rabbis. They're trying to give him, I'm not exactly sure what, but here they're assuming that Pitom and Ramses is one thing with different names. One says that Pitom has its real name. Why was it called Ramses? It was an appellation of indicating that the buildings were constructed as they collapsed, mitroses, right? Again, Ramses, mitroses, right?
So one collapsed and they built it again.
Yeah, they were collapsing as they were building and needed to be rebuilt. So as you built one, the idea is one by one and needed to be rebuilt. So that one of them believed, let's say it's Rav, we're going to pick on him first, right? As the store city was built, then the next one was built, the first one would get destroyed. You'd have to keep rebuilding them, and the names have to do with that pattern. And one says that Ramses was its real name. And why was it called Pitom? Because the opening of the abyss, Pi Tahom, swallowed each building as it constructed one by one, and it was sunk into the ground. Right? So it was really Ramses, it was really Pitom, and the names got swapped. And this is, again, opportunities for interpretation. Over winter break, we were in California. We got back last night. And we have an opportunity to look at moments in our lives in more than one way. I sat on my glasses, not these, the other ones, my reading glasses, and they broke. The lens popped out, the thing bent. I had just gotten them like a month ago. And I had a moment, I was very frustrated, but then I had a choice. of how can I interpret this moment? Is there something possible that I didn't notice that actually is going to be really helpful? I could be really mad about it, or maybe this is an invitation to show up differently. We found ants in my mother-in-law's pantry, a nightmare of any sort. And I said to her, this could be great. This could, not the ants. Ants are not great, but like there might be a hidden blessing in this, an opportunity that we don't yet know. And
She
we,
hit you over the head.
I'm sure she wanted to. And we had the opportunity to clear out her pantry and take out all sorts of things, right? I think the rabbis are always reminding us, when we look closely at a verse, closely at a scenario, closely at a situation, that there's more than one way to look at it. There's ways to see something in different shades, right? Nobody wants ants in their pantry, and yet we got a chance to clear out the pantry. That's a good thing, right? My glasses are right. My glasses are broken. I don't yet know what the good thing is going to be. I haven't been back to the doctor yet.
You couldn't see the ants.
But right, I couldn't see it. But I'm choosing that there's going to be something good comes from it. And I think the space for us to like play in that, to not get necessarily sunk in our first reaction, is like that's part of the game. And while the rabbis are doing it here about the first chapter of Shemot, I think that's a lesson for us, like as a reminder, right? Everything has an opportunity to be seen more than one way, right? My mom always says, like, you can always say something in a nicer way, right? There's always another way to take a crack at the thing you're trying to do. And so while that's not the lesson of any of these Gemaras in specific, I think as we learn from the rabbis, that is a reminder that when we walk through life, that we have a choice. We have different ways to look at it.
Very quick plug
Please.
for a book that I'm reading right now.
Please.
Coincidentally, called The Choice.
Ooh, I did not know this.
It's fabulous. It's a Holocaust book, which I kind of felt like there's a lot of Holocaust books in this world. I didn't intentionally pick up the Holocaust book, but it was like in a little free library. Anyhow, but it's about reframing things and like how she survives Auschwitz, and then later becomes Viktor Frankl is her mentor, and she becomes like a very renowned therapist. So it's her memoir, but also it's very inspiring.
I guess I think if you're looking at this larger context, it feels what they're actually trying to say is like there's a positivity to the 400 years that we're enslaved in Egypt, and that feels like a hard sell to me.
Yeah.
And I can see it on like a historical macro level, but like it's a lot of hardship, and it's a lot of trauma for like maybe good things happened.
Yeah, wait a second. Wait, 100%. That's not the argument I'm making.
No. But I think the rabbis would say that the
No, so I don't know if the rabbis would say that in particular.
Okay.
They would say that it was ordained in advance, and it was.
Sure. Sorry. Yes, that's
But
it was ordained in advance.
it was ordained in advance, and it was.
Pretty-
But, and then we'll end with this since we're quite a bit over, which is that the Gemara is a pedagogical tool, among other things. Right? It's a collection of traditions, collection of legends, halachic discussions, and it's teaching us how to think. And I think that one of the lessons we can take from this sort of collection of different takes is the practice of interpretation. And I would say my bias towards that is to see opportunity, to see that there could be a good thing, but not everything is a good thing. Some things just suck.
Yep.
And that's also true.
Except for this inspiring book about surviving Auschwitz. So.
We'll leave it at that.
Well, the